An illusion of perfect prosperity blinds the West, masking a hidden parasite devouring wealth. Quietly, systematic inflation begins its devastating erosion of global purchasing power. Milton Friedman issues a stark warning, exposing the fatal flaws of state-controlled economies. Desperate central banks battle stagnation, blind to the structural fractures under their feet. State economic networks expand, tightening their bureaucratic grip over free market operations. Deficit spending escalates rapidly as politicians fund massive, unsustainable social engineering projects.
The Federal Reserve aggressively tightens credit, triggering a sudden, severe credit crunch. Britain officially devalues the pound sterling, sending shockwaves through international banking networks. Global gold pools collapse under pressure, exposing severe vulnerabilities in the monetary order. The IMF invents special drawing rights, attempting to manufacture artificial liquidity out of thin air. Industrial productivity plummets dangerously while price controls fail utterly to halt rising inflation. Nixon shock destroys the gold standard, severing the dollar's anchor to physical reality. Global currency markets fracture completely into a chaotic, unanchored regime of floating exchange rates. The OPEC oil embargo paralyzes Western industry, triggering unprecedented lines at gas pumps.
Stagflation traps the global economy, rendering traditional Keynesian mathematical models entirely obsolete. Hyperinflation ravages emerging nations as major industrial empires face severe, systemic structural decline. The IMF enforces harsh austerity packages, sparking violent labor strikes across European cities. Energy shortages worsen relentlessly, prompting world leaders to draft emergency fuel rationing protocols. China opens up its economy to foreign capital, initiating the largest market migration in history.
Paul Volcker seizes the Federal Reserve chairmanship, determined to break inflation at any cost. Interest rates skyrocket to an unprecedented 20%, choking off speculative corporate borrowing. Reaganomics launches radical tax cuts, reshaping the foundational landscape of Western capitalist ambition. Mexico defaults on sovereign debts, sparking a systemic, continent-wide banking crisis across Latin America. Corporate debt restructuring accelerates globally as old industrial conglomerates face ruthless corporate raiders. The Continental Illinois Bank fails, prompting a massive federal bailout that establishes corporate privilege. The Plaza Accord coordinates global intervention to intentionally devalue the inflated American dollar. Financial deregulation unleashes Wall Street, triggering a speculative frenzy in commercial real estate markets.
Black Monday triggers a catastrophic global stock crash, vaporizing billions within hours. The savings and loan crisis deepens significantly, threatening the foundational savings of middle-class families. The Berlin Wall falls, suddenly introducing billions of desperate workers directly into global capitalism. Japan's massive asset bubble bursts spectacularly, plunging their financial system into decades of stagnation. The Soviet Union completely collapses, triggering a chaotic, hyperinflationary transition toward raw oligarchic capitalism.
George Soros breaks the Bank of England, forcing the pound out of Europe's mechanism. The European Union officially forms, creating a unified trade bloc with unprecedented geopolitical ambitions. The tequila crisis decimates the Mexican peso, requiring an emergency international bailout package. The World Trade Organization is established, locking global manufacturing supply chains into place. Alan Greenspan warns against irrational exuberance, yet speculative stock valuations continue rising completely unchecked. The Asian financial contagion erupts, toppling tiger economies and devaluing currencies overnight. Long-term capital management collapses, forcing Wall Street giants into an emergency, desperate rescue mission. The Glass-Steagall Act is repealed, breaking down barriers between prudent commercial banking and speculation.
The euro is born, locking disparate European nations into a single high-stakes monetary experiment. The dot-com bubble burst spectacularly, wiping out trillions in speculative and proven technology evaluations. The Federal Reserve slashes interest rates to historic lows, inadvertently igniting a massive real estate bubble. The invasion of Iraq destabilizes global energy markets, sending crude oil prices on an aggressive upward trajectory. Subprime mortgage lending explodes across Wall Street, securitizing high-risk debts into deceptive AAA-rated assets.
Global trade imbalances widen aggressively as China cements its dominant position as the world's factory. The American housing market silently peaks as default rates on subprime loans begin ticking upward. The credit liquidity freeze begins as major international banks refuse to accept toxic mortgage-backed securities. Lehman Brothers collapses, triggering the worst global financial implosion since the Great Depression. Central banks launch quantitative easing, printing trillions of fiat dollars to rescue insolvent financial institutions. The European sovereign debt crisis erupts, forcing Greece into humiliating international bailouts and harsh austerity. Occupy Wall Street protests spread globally, while America suffers a shocking, historic sovereign credit downgrade. The European Central Bank pledges to do whatever it takes, printing unlimited funds to preserve the euro. Sovereign credit downgrades spread like a disease, forcing Japan to inject unprecedented monetary stimulus.
Aggressive sanctions isolate Russia, while central banks experiment with negative interest rates.
Greece suffers a catastrophic bankruptcy as a sudden Chinese stock market crash sparks panic. The shocking Brexit vote tears European markets apart as hyperinflation obliterates Venezuela's economy. Cryptocurrencies skyrocket furiously, challenging the institutional monopoly of traditional central bank fiat currency.
The United States initiates a massive trade war with China, destabilizing global corporate supply chains. The Federal Reserve quietly injects billions into overnight repo markets, signaling hidden financial system fractures.
Pandemic lockdowns freeze global commerce completely, triggering historic emergency stimulus spending programs. Supply chain chaos and massive monetary injections ignite a fierce, long-dormant inflationary fire worldwide.
Central banks aggressively spike interest rates, plunging markets into a dangerous new recessionary era.